All right, guys, I want to take a few minutes and discuss just the big picture of programming to give you a better idea of what we're doing in the gym, but specifically why we do it and why we don't just throw random workouts at you. So, this is going to be a big picture view. We're going to get more into the specifics and talk more about the terminology in subsequent videos. So, how we program is we like to look out into the future and we like to pick an event or something that we're interested in. That might be the CrossFit Open, it might be a marathon that's going on in Austin, a Tough Mudder or a Spartan race, something like that, or it might be one of our like in-house competitions that we like to do. So what we do is we kind of work backwards from there. So we pick the event that we're gonna focus our training around, and then we come up with our plan on how we're gonna get there. This kind of setup is more in regards to a strength bias CrossFit program. And we'll kind of talk about how this relates and how we put these things together. But so we like to think of the programming, all of the little cycles leading up to our event. We like to think of that as a macro cycle. This is the big picture plan for what we're doing in the next 3 months to a year. So once we kind of have what we're going for, that can further narrow our focus on how we're going to get there. Some typical mesocycles we see. So now a mesocycle is going to be littler chunks of training that we piece together within our bigger macro cycle. And each of our mesocycles are going to have a specific purpose. Our goal is to, within each mesocycle, really work on something and have time to adapt to the stimulus we're applying to ourselves, but not enough time to plateau from that. So within a macro cycle, within the big picture, we're going to have 3 or more mesocycles. Each mesocycle typically runs about a month, but we're not completely restricted to like a 4-week on-off thing. So the different types of mesocycles we typically use in here are going to be a hypertrophy mesocycle. So that's going to be more based around building muscle. The order of these things really matter as they build on one another. Hypertrophy cycles in here typically run between 3 and 6 weeks. And we might do multiple of them. So we don't always just do a hypertrophy, a strength, a peak, a taper. Sometimes we do multiple hypertrophies before moving on, but the key is that this order matters as we kind of work our way up. So first with hypertrophy, we're building muscle. We're making ourselves grow so we have more things to build on. From there, we're going to work on strengthening the new muscle we've built. So our strength phases usually will need to have a deload in there where we'll kind of work up, getting heavier and heavier for 3 to 4 weeks, and then we'll have 1 week where we go really light or really easy. That way we can kind of recoup. And so typically, again, we'll have 1 or multiple of our strength mesocycles in here. Then we'll have a peaking mesocycle. Typically, we'll do just 1 of these. And this is when we get really close to whatever our event is, and this is where our training gets more and more functional and more specific for the event we're actually leading up to. So if it's a Tough Mudder, we're going to start running a little bit more. We're going to start doing more things that look like the obstacles we're going to run into. If it's a CrossFit competition, we're going to be doing more classic CrossFit things. If it's Olympic weightlifting, basically what we're going to do in the peaking phase is just get more specific for what your ultimate goal is. In the taper phase is where, leading up to the actual event, we back off of our training, we let our body restore its glycogen stores, recover its muscles, and that way we are in our peak performance mode for our event. So even if we're just working out for general fitness, we still like to go through these different phases. So when we're working on one thing, we're giving other things a break. And it actually gives us a real good opportunity to get as maximal adaptations as possible without plateaus. So What do these phases look like? Typically, hypertrophy is going to be more reps in the ranges of 8 to 20, stuff like that. Percentages to our 1 rep max, we're going to be in that 50 to 65, 70%. So it's going to be a little bit lighter, more reps to get there. So volume and intensity. What we mean by volume is basically the total number of reps you're doing multiplied by the weight you're doing it at. So in the hypertrophy phase, we're going to be doing lighter weight but a lot more reps, and that's going to add together to be a lot more volume than we're going to see kind of as we move on. The higher, heavier weights are a lot more taxing on our body, so we don't need to do as much total work when we're up into those higher intensities. Intensity can just really stand for how hard we're going. So this can be weight, and so the intensities in our hypertrophy phase are going to be between that 50 and 65, 70%, somewhere in there for the most part. And then as we go up and up, our weights get heavier and heavier, and so the intensity gets higher. So our strength phases, now we're looking at reps of 3s to 6s, 3 to 8, somewhere in there. And our intensities are going to be in that 65, and we're kind of moving up into that 85, 90% range. So like I said, the volume is going to be coming down a little bit, but the amount of weight we're doing is going to be coming up as we go through our strength phases. Then in our peaking phases, typically this is when we're maxing out our intensity. So this is when we're going to find all of our maxes. So peaking phases, it'll start around the 85, 90% range. And as we go through our peaking phase, it's going to get up into our 1 rep maxes. So what we like to do is we like to pick where we want our maxes to be at the end here. And then when we work off of our percentages through our hypertrophy phases, our strength phases, and our peaking phases, we're not working off of established 1 rep maxes. We're working off of the numbers that we're hoping to get to. So we're going to pick reasonable PRs or personal records, and those are the numbers we're going to base everything off of during our program. That way, week in, week out, we're showing ourselves that we are strong enough to lift the weight that we're ultimately going for. And we just prove it to ourselves over and over and over again here. Within each of these phases, there's a lot of volume and intensity ranges. But typically what we see also is the first week in a phase is going to be the easiest or lowest volume, and then we're going to work up in volume each week. We might have a transition week or a deload week where we would drastically cut the volume. And then some programs like to do like a medium volume, a really low volume, and a high volume. So different programs do it in different ways. Here we like to just kind of linearly build along each time. So what you'll typically see is weights will go up and the rep scheme will kind of stay the same with percentages going up as we make our way and chip our way through these 3 to 6 week phases within each of the mesocycles. So along with kind of the big picture, how we're really pushing along our strength numbers, we also want to develop skills. So if we take handstands or jump roping, for example, and if you do handstands or jump roping once every couple of weeks, you're going to be really limited on how much progress you can make on these movements. So what we're looking to do is take these high skill movements and do them in 3 to 4 week mini cycles. So we're going to work on these skills a few times in a week for a few weeks in a row so we can really make a lot of progress. And the great thing with these more skill related things is to keep them really, really sharp. You got to practice them all the time, but to get them good and maintain them at a pretty good level, you just have to get it there. Once it's there, they stick around for a while. And then when we come back to it, we can build on that. But really what we found is the people who get really, really good at all of these specialty skills that we do in here have taken 3 to 4 weeks to just dive in, get a good grasp on it, and then they really hold on to a lot of those skills even when they do them just every so often from there. The other thing is when we're talking about these rep schemes and stuff, I was mainly talking through the slower lifts, the squatting, the pressing, the deadlifting, that kind of stuff. We have our faster lifts, the Olympic lifts, clean, jerk, and snatch. So a lot of powerlifting programs will use their slow lifts on one day, and then on another day, they're going to have more of a dynamic effort day. So this is going to be more based around speed, moving the bar with lighter loads. For us, our Olympic lifts are basically dynamic days. If you think of how much you clean relative to how much you deadlift, the percentages that get put in there really fit in well to how these world-class powerlifting programs run their dynamic effort days. And so within each week in these things, typically we're having a hard day and a light day or a dynamic day. And so you'll see that a lot. Sometimes in the weeks 3 and 4, where we're really pushing the volume in here, we're going to have 2 hard days. But a lot of times you'll see 1 hard day, and then sometimes you'll see 1 hard day with a dynamic day. And then when we're really pushing the volume, we might have 2 hard days in the week. So as a big picture, kind of the framework we use to develop our programming, it looks something like this. And then within each of these, and we'll dig into this in future videos here, but within each of these we can really start digging into week by week how to put a program together that makes sense to get overall good at everything, or if we want to bias strength in a certain way, or cardio, how we can make little tweaks to programming here and there. But the big takeaway here is that we need this big plan. We can't just throw random workouts like spaghetti against a wall and hope something works. To really maximize our efforts in the gym, we need this big plan of thinking so we actually know how to get more and more focused into what our goals really are. All right, I'll talk to you guys again soon.